Welcome back to Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA. In today's episode, we're talking about building and creating combinations like a professional. Too many times when we think about combinations, we think about the strike itself, the punch, the kick, the knee, the elbows, but there's more to building combinations, and in this episode, I'm going to break it down for you.
Bazooka Joe Baltellini.
Before creating any combinations, it's important to know what you're doing on your outside movement. And that's step one to creating a good combination. You have to think, what is your opponent doing? Are you fighting a pressure fighter, someone who moves more, or maybe you're fighting a southpaw? So before I even throw that combination, I gotta think, which way am I circling? Which way am I turning my opponent? What angles am I trying to create in my strike? So that's what outside movement does. It also determines what distance you're fighting at. I might want to throw combinations from double distance or might want to throw it from closer. So I need to decide at that point, what am I doing before I throw my combination? And that's what I call the outside movement. So you have to think, this imaginary opponent could be a pressure fighter, could be a movement fighter, or a southpaw. So let's take the example of a southpaw. If a southpaw is coming at me, I'm circling to the outside, or I'm circling inside. I'm deciding before I throw my combination. If I'm fighting a pressure fighter, I might be moving, evading, circling, trying to keep my distance. If my opponent's moving, I might be stepping forward, closing distance before my combination. So step one is understanding the outside movement. Before any combination, I like to slightly turn. This way I can get different angles and I can attack down center line or in areas where my opponent can't see. Once you have created the outside movement, it's important that you throw a feint to try to trick your opponent and to get a reaction. You need to enter safely. If your opponent's waiting to counter and you just enter without feinting, he might be able to hit you before you hit him. So now that I'm creating my outside movement, boom, I create my feint to get a reaction. And remember from my feinting video, there's two reactions you get. One is a defensive reaction where my opponent might respond by lifting his hands up to protect his head, where then I could feint, maybe attack the body off of that. Or my opponent might show a counter reaction where I see the hand move, so now I know what they're gonna counter with, so I could evade it, move, or now, because of my outside movement, I might circle away from that power shot that he wants to counter with. Now that I created my feint for my safe enter, the third part is thinking about your hand position before you throw your combination. Your hand position will determine which strike is better. If I'm feinting and I want to kick, I might feint with my hands up so I could chop and defend counter punches. Now, say I want to get on the inside, attack the body, utilize my boxing, I might feint with my lead hand maybe a little bit lower so I could attack the body or create different up angles where my opponent can't see. So knowing my hand position before I enter is really important. Now that your hand position is set, the fourth part is to enter for the combination. You have to think, which way are you going to close that distance down? For example, you might want to throw a double jab to enter. You might want to enter on a nice little angle, or you might want to attack with your kicks or your punches. So you have to decide what the enter is. Is it going to be a straight line, or are you going to attack on angles? Are you going to double step, or you might want to do a draw attack? So it depends on what you want to do as well as your opponent. But the enter is really important because it helps create the angles. You don't always want to create an enter on a straight line. This is why the outside movement, the feinting, all helps you set up to this point when you throw your combination. So make sure you get creative with your enters, use angles, use feints to get them, and attack safely. Too many times when we do them, we always step in a straight line, which is good because it's your textbook classic power way. But sometimes you need to create different angles and get creative. For example, if I want to enter with my double jab, I might be entering, stepping out on the left, creating a slight angle so my jab can land. If I just jab this way, my opponent's going to block. But now if I enter on a slight angle, my jab's going to land, and this is going to allow me to get different punches on different angles to be more effective. Now that you've created your enter, it's time for the combination. And at this point, you can throw any combination you like. This video isn't about specific combinations. It's about you entering safely to throw the combination you want based on your opponent, your game plan, and your coach. The last part to a professional combination is the exiting. Too many times when we throw our combinations, whether it's on pad, bags, or shadow boxing, we throw the combination and we stay there and we wait. A lot of times we put our hands down and we don't stay engaged in the drill or the shadow boxing or what we're trying to do. So it's important that after you throw your combination, you build in an exit. And an exit can mean different things. My exit can be triangle stepping out to create distance again and to avoid counter shots. Or my exit might be to slightly step out, block my opponent's counter to counter back. So you have to know what you're doing with your exit. But you can't just stay there and be a standing target. If you are, you better have good hand position and be ready to fire back. So always think about the safe exit and the game plan as well, because they go hand in hand. If I know my opponent's moving, I'm gonna enter with a nice combination, attack. Instead of moving backwards, I might close the distance some more to keep the pressure on him. If I'm fighting someone who's a big power puncher and I want to evade that power, I might get my enter. My combination might be to exit into a triangle step to stay long, because I don't want to sit there and eat the power. So you have to decide after that combination where you're going to exit, because one, you want to be able to attack again, or two, you want to evade the punches or the counters from your opponent. There you have it, 6 different steps to create the perfect combination like a professional. It's important to take into account all of these different steps. As an amateur, we're too focused on the combination itself. You have to remember what happens before and what happens after. That all determines, one, is your combination going to land successfully because you're moving on an angle before the combination? Or am I going to be hit less because I'm moving and creating space? So it's more important to the overall picture. It makes the combination more fight realistic. And when you do fight now, you automatically build in these enters and exits, and you're going to be more successful, which means hitting more and getting hit less. I hope you're enjoying the channel. Keep liking, subscribing, and sharing Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA.